But I'm also equally excited that MJ's with us tonight, and he's going to channel for you. He's going to tell you the original story of the formation of Voci, Canton Civic Opera, from a book by Boris Goldovsky called My Road to Opera, in which he wrote all the memoirs of his life and dedicated several pages to the formation of the Canton Civic Opera. Boris, are you ready?
Not long after my return to Cleveland during that fateful autumn of 1939, a delegation of singers from the town of Canton, located some distance to the south of Akron, came to see me with a request that I help them organize an opera group, as I had done with the Akronites. I told them that regretfully it was out of the question. I was much too busy as it was, trying to direct an opera department, teach the piano, and keep 2 opera groups going to take on a new assignment. They then asked if by any chance I knew of someone who could come out of Canton, out to Canton, to get them started. Unfortunately, I knew of no one, but I said that I would try to find somebody who could do the job. I had little time to give the matter much thought until a few weeks later when, out of the blue, I received a telephone call from a Hungarian named Julius Toldy. Like so many others, he had been forced to flee his homeland to escape the jackboot advance of Hitler's legions, and he had found momentary refuge in Cleveland. He was a well-trained musician, or so he told me. He was looking for a job, he was starving, his wife was starving, and so on. Having been a refugee myself, I listened with sympathy to his tale and told him to come to see me. Toldy's credentials seemed fairly good. He had studied in Vienna under Schoenberg and Webern, and he had even managed to obtain a recommendation from Bruno Walter. His wife was a painter, but she had had to leave most of her canvases behind. She would have to start again from scratch in a country where her name meant nothing. Meanwhile, they were starving. I asked Toldy what he could do as a musician. "Anything you want me to," he answered confidently. "Do you play the piano?" "Yes, though not particularly well." "Can you train choruses?" "Of course." "And can you train soloists?" "Certainly," he answered. "I'll do anything you want." I should have known better. But I felt sorry for this poor fellow whom the Wehrmacht and the Gestapo had run out of Vienna. It occurred to me that Toldy might be just the person needed for the opera group in Canton. So without further ado, I arranged for him to coach the Canton chorus and singers. It meant 2 trips a week and a $10 fee for each training session, enough to keep him and his painter wife from dying of hunger. At first, everything went well. The Canton group seemed pleased with Toldy's coaching. After 3 months or thereabouts, one of them telephoned to say that they had learned the Bartered Bride. "Except that we haven't got a tenor, that you promised to give us a tenor from Cleveland." "Yes," I replied, "I would give them a tenor from Cleveland." I asked a few questions about the opera to find out how far along they were with their preparations. And finally I said that I would drive out to Canton to see how everything was going. Well, when I reached Canton, I was agreeably surprised to discover that they really had studied and rehearsed their parts. They wanted to put on the opera at the auditorium of the Timken High School. Rick Turek would truck his scenery out from Cleveland, while I attended to the staging. Except for the tenor whom we were to supply from our opera group, they had all the necessary singers and enough players to supply the orchestral accompaniment. Not least of all, they had managed to do all of this without going bankrupt. Every major problem seemed to have been solved, and the future looked auspicious. "By the way," I asked Toldy, "can you conduct?" He laughed. Who can't conduct? Anybody can conduct. That's no problem. Oh, chimed his wife, you know, Yuli is the diminutive of Julius, which she used to designate her husband. Yuli is so excited by the prospect that he stands before the mirror and he beats time like this. And she offered me a demonstration of her dear Julius in action. His ridiculous affirmation, anybody can conduct, should have given me pause. But compassion had momentarily got the better of my caution. And so, on the day scheduled for the first orchestral rehearsal, I drove to Canton and took my place in the Timken High School auditorium next to the opera group's directors. Raising his baton, Toldy had his instrumentalists launch into the overture of The Bartered Bride. But it was soon painfully evident that he had not the faintest idea how to conduct an orchestra, still less singers on a stage. He didn't know how to give a proper downbeat, nor a second beat, nor a third. He didn't know how long, but the instrumentalists, as long as they kept their eyes on the score, were able to play fairly well, but if their eyes strayed toward the conductor, their sense of tempo began to vary and became confused. The singers, who had no score to go by, were even more perplexed by Toldy's random gesticulations and were soon hopelessly out of time with the orchestra. The directors finally looked at me questioningly, and I felt like crawling under my chair. Finally, to spare everyone further embarrassment, I stood up and said, I think we better call it a day. Everybody's tired, so why don't we all go home and get a good night's sleep, and then everything will go fine for tomorrow's dress rehearsal. I then withdrew to a schoolroom office for a private meeting with the directors. What is the meaning of this? They asked me, looking considerably put out. Gentlemen, I said, I'm as surprised as you are. Mr. Toldy, I thought, had done a good job so far. Oh, yes, they agreed. We have nothing against Mr. Toldy as a teacher. We like Mr. Toldy as a coach for the chorus and the leading singers. Only, and here they all nodded their heads in agreement, only he doesn't seem able to conduct. Well, I said, I'll be honest with you. Because he could do those other things, I too thought that he could conduct. I should have known better. This is my fault. But I'm not going to leave you in the lurch. I'm going to cancel all my engagements in Cleveland for tomorrow and the day after, and I'll stay here and conduct the dress rehearsal and the performance. After the meeting, from which Toldy had been deliberately excluded, I rang him up and I said I wanted to see him the next morning for breakfast. He came round to the hotel where I was staying, and over 2 cups of steaming coffee, I broke the bitter truth to him. You know, Toldy, you've done a fine job training the singers and the chorus, and you deserve full credit for it. But training singers is not the same thing as conducting an orchestra. I thought you could conduct, because you told me you could. And because of that letter you showed me from Bruno Walter, which made it sound as though you had studied with him. But I realize now that you have never in your life conducted a symphony, still less an opera. So, you must let me conduct the dress rehearsal and the performance. Aha, he exclaimed with a steely look in his eye. I knew it all along. I told my wife, you know, Goldovsky wants me to do all the dirty work. But Goldovsky wants to take all the glory. Well, I'm sorry, mister, this is not going to work. This is my show, and I am going to conduct the dress rehearsal, and I am going to conduct the performance because my name is on the program. So don't think for a moment that you're going to get away with this. Toldy, I said, you're being silly, really silly. You have a good thing going for you here. You have a small income. You've made a nice impression on these people. They like you for what you've taught them to do. So why spoil everything at the last moment by doing more than you know how to do well? You say I'm trying to steal this conducting job away from you, as though I don't have a dozen more important things to do in Cleveland. I need this job like I need a hole in the head. But Toldy just laughed sarcastically. Ha, ha, ha. How wonderful it all sounds. But you are not kidding me for 1 second. I can see right through you. But I am not going to let you get away with this. I am going to do the rehearsal, and I am going to do the performance. Listen, I said, beginning to lose patience. Don't kid yourself about this. If you insist on making it so hard for everybody, you are not going to keep this job. You won't be re-engaged for another season. That I can guarantee. Because these people are very upset about this whole business. Aha! Now you're threatening me. He cried with an even more sarcastic laugh. But just wait, I will show you. I will sue you. There was clearly no point in continuing the argument. If Tolding was stubbornly determined to be his own worst enemy, there was no way I could stop him. Fortunately, there was a baby grand piano in the pit, and so when the time came for the dress rehearsal, I approached the orchestra players and said, I'm going to play the piano for this rehearsal. Tolding made no objection. Sure, you play the piano, you'll be part of the orchestra. Don't pay any attention to him, I told the instrumentalists. Play along with me as I play the piano. The singers are well trained and should be able to follow. This dress rehearsal was one of the weirdest experiences imaginable. The orchestra played and the singer sang along with the piano, while Tolding stood at the podium waving his arms ecstatically. We went through the same incredible rigmarole for the public performance. When it was all over, I mopped my brow with relief. Singers and orchestra players were loudly applauded while Tolding stood out in front, bowing and smiling and taking credit for everything. But a little later he got a nasty shock, just as I had predicted. The directors of the Canton Opera Group informed him that his services would not be required for the next season. Julius Tolding's rage against me, Boris Goldovsky, calling me the scoundrel who had tried to steal his glory and who had later pulled the rug out from under him by taking over the group he had so brilliantly trained, now knew no bounds. He raved and foamed at the mouth, and later, dipping his pen in vinegar, he wrote a furious book about his Canton experiences, in which I, though not actually named, was portrayed as a scheming blackguard and a master plotter, a sort of Iago or Scarpia of the orchestra pit, the very instrument of Satan.